Welcome to Biography Central. You are listening to Life of Sri Ramakrishna, a complete biography. Chapter 11. Haladhari. At this time, there came to Dakshineshwar another man who was to be closely connected with the life of Sri Ramakrishna for a period of 8 years. His name was Ram Torak, or more familiarly Haladhari, who lived at Dakshineshwar probably from 1858 to 1866. He was a cousin of Sri Ramakrishna, being the eldest son of Kudharam's youngest brother. He came to Dakshineshwar in his search of employment. Mathur knew that he was related to Sri Ramakrishna, and so he was glad to engage him in the worship of Mother Kali till his cousin recovered from his divine madness. Haladhari was well versed in the Srimad Bhagavata and Adhyatma Ramayana, and was a master of the Gita and Vedanta. Though a devotee of Vishnu, he undertook, at the request of Mathur, to worship Kali. As he insisted on cooking his own food on the bank of the Ganges, Mathur remarked, "Why are you so particular? Sri Ramakrishna and your nephew Hriday do not object to taking the food offered to the Divine Mother." To this Haladhari replied, "My cousin has attained a certain state of realization, and he can do so. But as I have not yet reached that state, in my case it would be a sin." Mathur was pleased at this straightforward answer and allowed him to do as be pleased. Haladhari could not bear to see the animal sacrifice in the Kali temple. After nearly a month's service, he was meditating one evening, when Kali appeared to him and told him to leave the temple, and that as a result of his half-hearted worship, he would soon lose his son. Shortly afterwards, Haladhari's son passed away. After telling the entire circumstances to Sri Ramakrishna, Haladhari took up the service of Radha Govinda instead. Haladhari belonged to that degraded cult, which at that time was trying to practice the Madhura Bhava in its extreme form, so not through meditation as it should, but through secret relations with women. The matter soon leaked out, and people began to whisper about it among themselves, though none dared to accuse him publicly lest he should curse them. And there was a current belief that his curses always came true. When, however, the news reached the ears of Sri Ramakrishna, he in his outspoken manner spoke to Haladhari of what was being said about him and his practices. This infuriated Haladhari, who said, "You are my cousin and younger, and yet you dare to slight me thus. As a punishment for this, blood will come out of your mouth." Though Sri Ramakrishna tried to appease him, saying that his object in warning him was to save him from criticism, Haladhari remained unmoved and did not retract his words. Now that the Kali temple and its accommodations became known, many sadhus used Dakshineshwar as a halting place on their way to Gangasagar. It is probable that from some one of these Sri Ramakrishna learned the secrets of Hatha Yoga, which he now practiced. One evening soon after the above incident, he felt an irritating sensation in his palate, which after a minute began to bleed. Sri Ramakrishna described the incident. The color of the blood was dark like the juice of bean leaves. It was so thick that only a little portion fell to the ground, and the rest clotted and hung like a rope from my teeth. I pressed one end of my cloth against the place to stop the bleeding, but without success. I was sorely perplexed. Many people gathered round me. Haladhari, too, came in all haste from his evening services. I told him, weeping, "See, cousin, what you have done to me by your curse." Seeing me in such a plight, he too began to weep. Fortunately, at that time, there was staying in the Kali temple a sadhu who, hearing of the incident, came and examined the color of the blood and the place from which it came. He said, "Thank God, there is no cause for anxiety. This hemorrhage has done you great good. I see you were practicing yoga. This opened your Sushumna canal, and a quantity of blood was rushing to the head. It is excellent that this blood, instead of reaching the brain, made a passage through the palate, where you would have entered the Jada Samadhi from which you could never again come down to the plane of ordinary consciousness. It must be that the Divine Mother has some great mission to be done through you, and she has saved your body." I was reassured by his words and was at peace. Being an orthodox Brahmin, with great respect for the traditions of the Chatterjee family, Haladhari could not bring himself to justify the peculiar ways of Sri Ramakrishna. Though he lived with his cousin during the stormiest period of his sadhana, Yet being book-bound, he grossly misunderstood his cousin's exalted spiritual state and naturally concluded, like other people, that his actions were more the outcome of a deranged brain than of any high spiritual realization. Not having the breadth of vision which would enable him to look at things in their proper perspective, he would sometimes say to Hridai, "Look here, Hridai, it is really a blot on Ramakrishna's character that he has given up this sacred thread. Again, is it not awkward that he should remain naked before all? It is exceptionally good fortune to be born a Brahmin. Yet you see how Ramakrishna slights this rare privilege. I don't see that he has attained to such a high state of spiritual exaltation that he can afford to make light of the caste observances so recklessly. He does not take anybody's advice, accepting yours to a certain extent. You ought to see that his actions are more orthodox. In my opinion, you should use force even to prevent him from repeating these profanities. But at times, his ideas about Sri Ramakrishna would change. If perchance he were present when a master was in the sanctum of the Divine Mother, he would be struck at the sight of his cousin's unique devotion and earnestness and passionate prayers. Seeing this divine fervor, a thing of which he had had no experience in spite of his book learning, Haladhari would revise his opinions and find an excuse for the inconsistencies. Then he would run to Hridai and say, "Ah, you must have seen something divine in Ramakrishna. Otherwise, how could you serve him with such constancy?" Hridai, a somewhat changed man now, would answer with a smile, "Yes, you are right, uncle. Don't you see, I could not bring myself to serve others in such menial ways." So, Haladhari was tossed between doubt and partial conviction regarding his cousin's state of mind. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, "Many a time Haladhari, being struck by my devotion and zeal, would say, 'Ramakrishna, this time I have found you out.' I would retort, 'Take care that you do not get confused again.' 'You cannot deceive me any more,' he would reply. 'Surely the Lord is manifesting himself through you.' I would smile and say, 'Let us hope so. We live and learn.' But while studying in leisure hours some such book as the Bhagavata or the Adhyatma Ramayana with the occasional stimulation of snuff, he would again be inflated with pride, a brown-colored powder made from fermented tobacco leaves. A pinch of this powder was inhaled during those days for temporary stimulation. Throwing all humility to the winds, Haladhari would assume an air of great superiority, look at the world as a mere mud puddle, arrogate to himself the position of a great scholar, and thrust his opinions upon all. Sometimes I went to him and said, "What you have read in the scriptures, I have realized in life, so I can understand the import of the Shastras." Haladhari would flare up and reply in a swaggering tone, "Go to, you are an egregious fool, that you should say that you understand these abstruse things." I would reply, "Believe me, the divinity that you acknowledge to be residing in me teaches me everything." At this, Haladhari would become frantic with rage and reply, "How foolish! What scripture teaches that God would incarnate himself again in this Kali Yuga, except when he comes in the person of Kalki? You have verily become insane, or how could you entertain such thoughts?" I would remind him with a smile, "Why, did you not say a few hours ago that there would be no further confusion in your mind about me?" But Haladhari would not be in the mood to listen to it then. We had many repetitions of this amusing scene. Then one day, as he saw me sitting naked on a branch of the banyan tree in the Panchavati, he was thoroughly convinced that I had been possessed by a Brahmadaityya, a form of a demon. Haladhari, we have said, was a Vaishnava, and ever since the death of his child through the curse of Kali, he came to look upon that goddess as being of a tamasika or dire nature. One day, he even remarked to Sri Ramakrishna, "Can one get spiritual elevation by worshipping a tamasika form? Why do you bestow so much attention on the worship of Kali?" Sri Ramakrishna did not answer him then, but he was pained at the disrespect shown to his favorite deity. He at once went to the Kali temple and asked the Divine Mother with tearful eyes, "Mother, Haladhari is a scholar, versed in the scriptures, and he says thou art possessed of tamasika attributes. Art thou really so?" The mother herself enlightened him on the point. With a heart full of joy, he ran to Haladhari, who was engaged in the worship of Radha Govinda. Excited, he at once climbed on his shoulders and exclaimed again and again, "Dare you call my mother Tamasika? Is she? No, she is everything. She has all the three gunas. Again, she is full of sattva alone." Sri Ramakrishna's divine touch illumined Haladhari's heart. The scales fell, as it were, from his eyes. In a moment, he understood the folly of his remarks, realized his own littleness. He bowed his head in reverent submission, found in Sri Ramakrishna the manifestation of the Mother of the universe, and taking flowers and sandal paste, made an offering at his holy feet. Shortly after, Hridaya met him and asked how it was that he stooped to worship Sri Ramakrishna, especially as he believed him to be insane and possessed by an evil spirit. "Oh, I can't tell you how," replied Haladhari. "On returning from the Kali temple, he overwhelmed me altogether. I forgot everything and saw in him the clear manifestation of divinity. Whenever I visit him in the Kali temple, he has that kind of influence over me. Really, it is a mystery which I cannot solve." So in rare moments of illumination, Haladhari saw divinity in his cousin, but he forgot this when he went back to his books. Haladhari's conduct confirms the truth of the Master's statement that books are but knots on the heart. They stifle our cravings for God realization. We already discussed earlier that beggars used to be fed at the Kali temple. One day, Sri Ramakrishna, like the true weighed-on tin, that he was, ate a little of their leavings, considering these poor people as veritable representations of the Lord. When Haladhari saw him doing so, he, being an orthodox man, was upset and said, "What are you doing? You have lost caste. Now we'll marry your daughters in future." These incongruous words from the lips of a professed weighed-on tin like Haladhari roused the indignation of Sri Ramakrishna, who exclaimed, "You rogue, do you not always quote from the scriptures to say that the world is an illusion and God is the only reality, and glibly recommend people to look upon all beings as Brahman? And you think that I like you would preach that the world is a myth and at the same time have children? Fie upon your knowledge of the scriptures." One day, Haladhari cast aspersions on the truth of Sri Ramakrishna's God visions and said on the authority of the scriptures that God is beyond the reach of the human mind. That gave rise to grave doubts in the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. He thus described his feelings and the subsequent experience to one of his disciples, Swami Premananda. "I asked myself the question, are the various divine visions which I have had and the words I have heard from the lips of the Mother herself all false? Have they been mere fancies of my mind? Is it that I have been fooled by the Divine Mother?" To me, the very thought was painful and blasphemous. I was greatly perplexed. With sobs I prayed to the Mother, "How couldst thou have the heart to deceive me like that, because I was a fool?" A stream of tears flowed from my eyes. Shortly after, I saw something like a volume of mist rising from the floor and filling the space before me. In the midst of it appeared a fair face, calm and highly expressive, with a flowing beard. Fixing its steady gaze upon me, the figure solemnly said, "Well, remain on the threshold of relative consciousness." Repeating this thrice, the face gently disappeared in the mist, which also dissolved. This vision reassured me. Another day, such a doubt, and that too, owing to the confusing arguments of Haladhari, crossed his mind. On that occasion, too, the Master, as he sat down to worship, begged of the Mother to dissolve it. She appeared before him in the form of a certain woman known as Rithi's mother, beside the sacred jar used in worship, and repeated the same words. A third time, he heard the same voice after he had come down from the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But of this, let's discuss later. I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.